This is the long game. And within the long game, there's many long games. That long game could be on a day-to-day basis. It could be on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a yearly basis, every 6 months, quarter, however you want to define it. But you have to define it. You cannot sit there and allow circumstances to dictate your emotion and let the circumstance dictate your behavior or your actions. You cannot do that. That is a recipe for disaster. You've been in business since your mid-20s, about?
Residential lending in some form or another, yes.
Yeah. This business is a grind.
That's a nice way of putting it.
It is a grind. There's a lot to learn. And I think what I've learned more so over the last 2 years is what I would have implemented and I think a lot of it's stubbornness. So, but I think if the stuff that I learned over the last 2 years, I wish I knew in the first year of this business. That being, this is a relationship-driven business. And you hear that all the time. It's relationships first. But when you're young or new to the industry, the only thing you think about is one thing: money.
Yep.
How much can I make? How fast can I make it? Can I do that? I started in 2015 in insurance. You started in
2013.
2013 in residential lending. Right? Residential lending?
2013 is when I got my license. Wow.
It's a long time. It's a long time. When you start, you feel like you're on cloud nine, licensing done, until you get your first deal. And then you're like, all right, cool, I got it done. I remember my first insurance policy I wrote, I think I might have told you a little while ago. I remember being like, this person just gave me their life, their socials, their kids' names, their birthdays, the kids' socials, their address, how long they lived, everything possible. And
right.
They gave me it all. And then that goes away, and it's like, where am I going to get the next one? How am I going to get the next one? So today's episode, we're going to talk about what we wish we knew in year one. I think we should talk about how we continue this in practice in year 11 and year 14.
Yeah, approaching 14. Yeah.
Because the hard part's not just learning the product. The hard part is learning the people.
Right.
You have to learn product. That just, you need, bar none. I'm not saying this isn't to say don't learn your product. This is, you definitely have to know your product. That's for sure. But that's the practice, not the game, as Iverson would say.
Yeah. Talk about practice?
We talk about practice. So, Colin, bring me to year one. We have, in 2013, you're in business, probably, suit, all that, whatever it is. You sit down, you're probably drinking water or fire hose. Let's go through year one. Who are you in that time of your journey? What were you expecting in year one? And just kind of you look into where you are now.
Yeah, so year one is completely different than where I am now. Year one, I was actually at a large bank, and I held licenses, so financial services representative. But so at the bank, I wasn't just responsible for financial services, programs. I also had to open accounts and take transactions. Sometimes I had to learn how to run a drawer and to be a teller and do all that sometimes. And then as part of getting to a supervisor role, I had to learn lending too, residential lending. So, the home equities and mortgages. So where I was then, I was all, Joseph A. Bank suit, tie, the double, the Windsor knot, learn how to retie a tie again. So it was, I didn't know, I couldn't prepare my day because I didn't know what the next client was walking in asking to sit at my desk for. Mm-hmm. So when it came down to on the spot, hey, I want to be pre-approved for a mortgage, it was like, okay, what do I need to log into? What do I need to do? So it was where I am today. It's completely different where I was then because I didn't necessarily know when I was going to have that mortgage conversation. But then I was learning, I was 23, 22 years old, whatever I was then. I hadn't been through the process. I had never really talked to my parents or, none of my friends owned a home yet. We just graduated college, for God's sake.
Right.
So,
the hungover.
None of us
No,
had a home yet,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
even some of our older friends hadn't gotten into that venture yet. You
Yep.
know, they were still 2-3 years and just building their careers too. So nobody really had a home of their own. Like they rented a house in off campus or something like that. That's completely different
It's
than
different.
owning a home.
Yeah.
So learning it, I was very happy to learn it so that because I knew I wanted to own my own home one day. So I was very happy to learn it. But it was difficult to prepare to have that conversation because I didn't know when it was coming to my desk next.
Yeah.
Um, and then quite frankly, you know, it wasn't because there were so many different aspects I had to learn of being at the bank. It wasn't go out and make those connections with realtors, go out and make those connections with insurance agents or other, first look professionals. It
A
was,
lot of cross-selling stuff.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was, whoever comes to your desk next, you're looking for the opportunity to give them the whole relationship of the bank to that client. But yeah, I couldn't prepare for that, the mortgage conversation per se. 'Cause that was the toughest part.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably very similar for me. When I think about when I first got in, quoting is especially now, but quoting then was like very and I'm a pretty good typer, but almost like, typing like this and really slow and afraid to mess up. And I don't want to, charge somebody more or less than I should. But that was the price mindset. Everything to me then was price, price, price. Um, but I just feel like when I think about I think back then, especially going into like BNIs, and you have to go into learn, meet realtors and network and stuff like that. My biggest year one and probably year two to like five for that matter, for those who are listening, this business you don't figure it out
Overnight.
overnight. It takes longer than a year.
Yeah.
There's a book that my old regional manager told us to read called The Outlier, where basically like after 10,000 hours of doing the thing is when you feel the most comfortable. And I think that's pretty spot on. But it was thinking that because I met you at an event, you liked me and I liked you and we shook hands and we exchanged cards, is that tomorrow that you're going to be thinking of me. That was such a hard pill to swallow.
Mhm.
Because I think that I present well in scenarios and networking events and stuff like that. I'd appear to be likable, or at least I think. But I think that going into social settings, specifically business social settings, my mind was always set on like, I just need these people to like me so I can start getting business for them.
Right.
And then you meet and you go to BNIs and you do this and you're doing it for a year, and all of a sudden, like, why isn't my business the
Yeah.
way it is?
You're taking it personal when it's a professional aspect. It's a profession now.
Mhm.
You're taking it personal that, hey, they didn't like me enough to give me the business.
Yes.
But they knew nothing about you as a professional. And that's the part that I agree with you wholeheartedly, is that I took it way too personal in my 20s. Like, they don't want to work with me. First of all, you're new to the business.
Yep.
So they're going to want to know someone's background in the industry and what they can do and the support team they have. So 100%, I took it way too personal. And it was like, I'll make up for that by working more hours.
And correct. And then you start fueling burnout.
Yep.
You start saying, I'm going to just have to pound the phones and make 100 phone calls to realtors, 100 phone calls to lenders, 100 phone calls to customers. And you talk to how many? 3.
Yeah.
You could present to how many? Maybe 1. Right? It's not a recipe for success. Now, for some will. Like some people, I know this dude was an animal. He came from debt collecting, and he said, all we did from 8 to 8, we never left our desk. Calling to collect this debt. He would just hammer the phones. He'd make 1,000 phone calls a day. And he took that motto into insurance, and it worked well for him. I couldn't do that. It would burn me out. But going back to just the social settings and the events, it's easy to get in your head, like you said, take it personal, to then not take action.
Right.
I put this on Facebook. I heard this actually, and the reason why I put it on Facebook because I thought it resonated. Every time, if you ever see me post a quote or something that's like a one-liner, that's not this long ChatGPT post,
Yeah.
it's because something resonates to me and it pops up. And oftentimes when that pops up, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like a journal, if you will, right? But it was an overwhelmed person's never going to take action, and it resonated with me because when you get into this business, it is overwhelming.
Mhm.
You're drinking water out of a fire hose. There's regulation. That's a whole nother ballpark, like
Yeah.
of this business. Again, there's the people, there's the product, there's the systems, and it gets to the point where I like mentally felt like, man, this isn't for me. You ever feel like that you did not want to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of the time was with those social settings. I was like, all right, just pass out business cards. Something will stick. That's what you get told.
Mhm.
Something will stick. Just pass out a million business cards. And I would say it was about like, and mind you, I was doing it, I was getting referred business from local businesses to open up some accounts. Nothing to do with the mortgages aspect or even the financials, the services stuff too. It was the lower stuff, what we would have called the non-sticky product that
Mhm.
they could just, one thing could go wrong, up and leave and go somewhere else and it would not be. But like with your mortgage, that takes a process to refinance away from that company. So that's why we would call it, the accounts and debit cards and stuff like that. You can close out and move that on same day.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, online banking back then is not what it is today, where it's so heavily relied on, but mobile app, all that stuff. But I would say it was around year 2, 24 months in. I started to see more production, but that was because I had crafted my conversation with those that came in to talk to me. I didn't craft anything from a conversation perspective when I was talking with those professionals. It's just go out. If they like me, they'll give me business. I got to a point where year 2, it was like, all right, no one likes me.
Yeah.
I'm not getting
Yeah.
the business on that side of things. And it was an avenue that I really liked, having my background being analytical and numbers based. I wanted to work with those numbers. I could open an account and have chit chat and do it in 20 minutes. A mortgage with a longer process and actually building a rapport with someone to trust, that was interesting to me.
Sure.
So I was 2 years. I was like, what am I doing with this? I should just focus on the other stuff that's coming in every day, and that's what I'll do. And it took a lot of management conversations to just stick with it. Just stick with it. You'll get better with it. At that point, that's where I started to realize like it's not just a transaction
Yeah.
because it was banking. So a lot of it was here's my deposit. Oh, I want to do this withdrawal. Like
Yeah.
it was transactional conversations where, hey, just start to think you're sitting on the other side of the desk with them. You're not, I know we're sitting on the opposite side like we are now, but really I'm over there with you. I'm just plugging in information because I have to, because the computer's going to give me the output.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think really, just thinking about what you're saying right now is early on in the career in this business. And I think this applies pretty much to any entrepreneur and then bridging into real estate, which is pretty much what we talk about: real estate, insurance, mortgages, loan officers, realtors, insurance agents. You have to take those first however much time it takes you as learning years, as opposed to expectation years, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right? You
Yeah.
can't expect things to go a specific way because you know how to talk to people. Everybody knows how to talk to people for the most part. Do you know how to communicate the right way is the thing. Do you know how to articulate a specific idea in regard to a transaction? That stuff comes over time.
Correct.
I will say one thing that really sticks with me from my Best Buy working years. I worked at Best Buy from 2008 to 2012. And when I first started, there was this model, I'm going to try to remember it. It was called trust. And it was, the idea is that you build trust, and this is how you do it, but it was an acronym. Thank the customer for coming in. You respect the customer. You understand the customer. You solve the problem for the customer. And then you thank them again. Those 5 things right there is something that I have started using in my career probably like 2 or 3 years ago again.
Mhm.
And it's so helpful because when you think of the word trust, it's like people do business with they who know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And if you could do those 5 things within the acronym, well, there you go. That's the building portion of it.
Right.
And I didn't really apply that right away because, again, it's overwhelming. And the demands of the world, the economy, and making money, and starting life at the time as like I had my girlfriend who's my wife now, and like I want to make sure that we can buy this house and live in the house, and everything is just getting thrown at you. I don't know if that's the same for everybody. I work with a lot of young kids, and I don't know how young of a sales force your team has. I have a pretty young sales force, and I would say 20% of our team are Gen Z,
Mhm.
which I think is a big number. And a lot of them have like this social anxiety because they don't go out and do the thing. They don't go out and meet people. They don't put themselves in uncomfortable situations. When you think about your first uncomfortable situation that became an aha moment, is there any time that you could think about a uncomfortable that you said, you know what, screw it, I gotta just insert myself to then become uncomfortable so I can learn from it? Was there a moment like that for you?
Yeah. So, fast forwarding from year one to, closer to where I am now,
Yeah.
during the pandemic, I switched away to a different aspect of, I became a reader.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would read a book from
Sure.
cover to cover, but I mean, there were some books. You got one behind you, Atomic Habits. I mean, that's a great book. So there's a few aspects of reading that I gathered and I didn't fully understand. And I think this was my biggest aha moment. And probably I read about it during the pandemic, but it didn't click until about 2 years ago. And you had mentioned it earlier that this is a relationship business. A lot of entrepreneur, but definitely sales, call it sales, is relationship based. But I thought about that more and I was like, well, what does that mean? Oh, I have a bunch of relationships. Well, what does that mean? They trust you. Okay. What does that mean?
Peeling back that onion.
What does it actually mean? This is what I started to read and understand was emotional IQ. You talked about in a previous episode about, when you're communicating the good news and or bad news, that's going to cause an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
How you manage that emotion or reaction for yourself, but also to present that to the client or the
Wow,
referral
yeah.
partner, that's a relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier too about communication. That is the relationship based business. How you take emotion for yourself and react to it, but then also what is your reaction to that client, that referral partner?
But that comes with practice though, right?
Absolutely.
You have to really practice that. So like what does practice with something like that look like for you? Like when you were going through it, did you jot down a few things that you wanted to be mindful of? Did you have like a script that you were ready for? Because I got to imagine now it's second nature for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of self audits, and that was not something that I did it in a, athletically. I'd always do self audits, and I was like, why wouldn't I do that personally and professionally? So it was a lot of self audits, and scripting. I had created a ton of different scripts, but it got to a point where I was like, all right, why don't I just create one blanket script? Because to build that relationship and trust, it still comes down to me as the individual presenting it, how I manage that. So it's going to be case by case basis. So I created 1,000 different scripts and it was like, but why? I'm presenting on mortgages. So I'm presenting on one thing. I'm presenting it to clients, whether they're first time home buyers, refinance, still mortgages, different people, but that's drawing the connection. So relationship, that's the emotion.
Yep.
Oh, I connect with this person. I like this person. I'm going to start to trust this person. That's all emotional based. So that was the aspect I think of, like, I was doing so much going back to the year one to be liked. I was doing so much. I was like, why?
Yeah.
What a person is going to trust and like and aspire to. And, whether it's a professional referral partner or an individual I'm working with, it's an emotional piece.
And I think
the payment causes emotional piece.
Yes.
Insurance, whether it's homeowners insurance or car, Auto insurance. Well, the first thing is, well, auto insurance, why would I need auto insurance? Like, in case I go to an accident. It's that bad thought, right? That's an emotion. I don't want anything to happen to
Right.
me or my family.
Yeah. What happens if? Yeah.
That's the thing. Oh, my payment's going to go up. Well, your principal and interest is not. Your insurance and taxes can't control what the town's going to do from a budget perspective.
Right.
But your insurance, you can talk to a professional. Absolutely. See what's going on. Do you still need that much coverage? Did your replacement have the conversation? That's an emotional draw. And I think that was what, having read so much, but then finally doing a self audit,
Yeah.
making it click.
You know what I love about reading, specifically like those older books and over time, because like when I first got into sales, I was reading, Tom Hopkins and all these sales books and methods, how to win friends and influence others, and Ray Dalio principles and its life principles and work principles, and a lot of this stuff as you're reading, especially early in your career, it's like in one ear and out the other. And then you go 4 or 5 years into your career, 6 years into your career, and you're like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense now. And I'll speak to even just the how to win friends and influence others, which I said in another episode, is like the one thing that really stood out to me on the conversational side of things is just get people talking about themselves. You asking a couple of questions about who, what, when, why, and where, as
Right.
opposed to like, how's your day going? Like very vague questions. Like, tell me more about what you're saying. What do you mean you like? How long have you liked golf? How often do you play golf? Where do you play golf? What's your favorite golf course?
Right.
Like, if you get people talking about the thing that they like, it's a game changer. And it's interesting how over time that stuff compounds into knowledge that makes sense. And that's what I mean. In the first 5 years of your business, you need to be soaking up every single thing.
Yeah.
And if you have the capacity, we even talked about it on the sports analogy, just keeping that stone face of not being reactive to the situation. I was a pitcher in college, and if I walked the bases loaded and had a reaction, the other team saw that on my face. If you take that approach into business, which I think this business, and I love it so much, is because I consider it a sport. Like, I can look at this as a sport now, having known that. If you take that approach into your business, you are going to find so much success day in and day out. You're going to lose. You're definitely going to lose more than you win in this business. That's just the nature of it. Like, I don't know I know I've never had a month that I closed 100% of the things that came in. That just never happens. I don't think I've closed a month that had 30% of the things that come in. That's just the way the business is.
Mm-hmm.
But you just need to get those fundamental pieces of that out of the way. Fail, learn, be reflective. That's probably the biggest thing for me, is being reflective in these social environments of like, what did I say? How did I say? What could I have said better? And don't beat yourself up about it.
Right.
Do not beat yourself up. You only can get better. You get better as you, not just age, but like as you get seasoned in the industry. So you mentioned Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits was one of the books that changed how I operate. Not everything. I still have a lot of things that I got to get better at. But the 1% better concept made so much sense. Why am I trying to make 100 phone calls about life insurance, to talk about life insurance, when one, I'm not comfortable with, I'm just using an analogy, but I'm not comfortable talking about the specifics of life insurance. How about let me do maybe one call a day instead of trying to do 100 calls. That's the 1% better. Okay, now tomorrow, do 2. Let me do 3, and find what works. Familiarity. And we'll talk about familiarity, because I said this to somebody the other day, and we'll go to the emotion piece, because I want to touch on that experience that I had recently with the client. Actually, we can talk about that first, and then we'll go to the familiarity piece on the relationship side. The other day I was talking to a client, and I thought she was going to be selling her condo, and she's not selling her condo. She's keeping it. She's keeping her condo, and she's buying another condo, and she's going to be renting out the other condo. And the lease doesn't start for about another month, and she's closing 2 weeks for her new condo beforehand. And she's like, I got all these quotes and all this stuff to look at, and I spent 45 minutes with her in the evening. My kids were upstairs, we're having dinner. I told my wife, hey, I got to step away. I got to help this client. And I'm helping her, and I'm going through all of this stuff with her. And the emotional piece that you mentioned, the emotional intelligence piece that's important in this job, as you were saying that, I realized, wow, I was emotionally intelligent in that moment, where she was like, I'm just super overwhelmed and stressed about this. Like, I don't know if I can make a decision on the other property right now. I can only focus on this and say, listen, I totally get it. You have the lender's asking a bunch of documents. Your realtor's probably hounding you for stuff. Now you have 12 different quotes from 3 different agents to look at. Totally get it. It's very stressful. Here's what I can tell you. You don't have to make a decision on your rental property right now. You know why? Because I said, it's like, when is your tenant moving in? She's like, yeah, she's not moving in until this date. And I was like, perfect. How about this? Let's take care of this right now. Make a decision on this, whether it's with me or with not. Let's go through this. I'll go through all the coverages with you. And if that sounds good, let's wait till you close. You still have plenty of time to make a decision on the other policy because you still own it as the owner,
Right.
not as the landlord. And I said, and I followed up with her. I said, hey, does that make you feel less stressed knowing you don't have to make a decision on all 3? Sometimes with the emotional intelligence piece is just reciting a question back to that person. Hey, how do you feel about doing it this way? How are you feeling about this situation? What does that look like for you? Because it confirms, 1, you're listening to them, and 2, they might receive it much better than just making like, oh, you know what? Let me push this down your throat to buy. What's your experience with emotional intelligence like that?
So first of all, listening is key. It's crucial. The next piece I'll elaborate to expand on that is to say you have to be able to understand when that client told you like, this is just too much for me right now. You took that concept. Okay, I have some possible solutions in my head, but I have to explain it. You took the possibility of some stress and you removed it from the picture, but they could still make some solutions, decisions with you. They could do that. So that's really the next aspect of like, yes, it's listening, but then truly letting the client know you understand what they're saying to you. And then, okay, when you can give them a sense of relief, and you couldn't solve the full picture right then and there,
Right.
but you solving the picture was providing them a sense of relief.
Right.
It wasn't giving them the insurance quotes and the policies
Right.
they needed.
Right.
That's the transaction part of it. That's not the relationship part of it. So you did solve in that instance. You used emotional intelligence, emotional IQ, whatever you want to, how you want to refer to it. That's a relationship.
Yeah. And you have to be okay with going at the pace of the client.
Mhm.
That you it's just the way it is. Like, I mean, I think things are different. The buyer profile for sure is different. When I got into the industry, there were many 25-year-olds buying houses. And I was dealing with your baby boomers, your Gen X's around there. You fast forward a decade later and you got 21-year-olds buying single family homes, 22-year-olds buying multifamily homes. Like things have changed, but it is important to ask the right questions. Be okay with saying, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, how do you feel about this scenario for you right now? Because and going back to the how to win friends and influence others, ask questions about that person, that scenario, the building relationship piece.
Yeah. And, just looking down here, year 1 to year, 12 to, 14 for me, approaching 14, it was not a steady line of progression whatsoever. If anything, it was more like this, and, had a bunch of waves, and, there were some outside factors, some stuff that we couldn't control. The pandemic was a big two-year difference there, and what did, from your perspective, I think natural disasters, we had that span of, the California wildfires and some other stuff that, the hurricane season started to progress to happen more often.
Even yesterday, we had some pretty bad storms here yesterday. Like it was quick, but I drove down the road half a mile and there was trees down. Like that's.
Yeah. We've seen a tornado come through in this area that was, pretty devastating. So, and there's more and more touching down every year. So, the payouts have increased on the claims perspective. So the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen premiums go up, and accidents are happening more and more. And there is going to be a shift. And you mentioned that too. And just it's from a professional aspect, whatever your profession is. If you're in the sales, understanding what's happening today, but what's set to occur too. From my in mortgages right now, the largest home ownership generation is baby boomers.
Right.
Well, what does that mean? Well, there is going to be a massive transition
of wealth, right?
Of wealth, but also home ownership, because those homes will eventually, not to, it's going to progress to the next generation.
Yeah.
Because if you can take that, that's 49, about 49%. They're saying the next generation is 26% of the buyers.
Mhm.
And then it kind of whittles down from there. But that's because in a few more years, those numbers will shift
Yeah.
and they'll progress higher and higher. The average age for a first-time home buyer in New England is 33
Right now.
Yeah. But you said it yourself, like there's 21-year-old home buyers. There's so many different ways now that, what we're doing on podcasting, people do ads and you can be a millionaire at 18 years old. There's just different ways that past generations, I'm not saying didn't have access to, but like they just weren't created yet.
Right.
So-
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You had asked me, and I'm going to ask you this, and I think we did this in our drive one. I don't even think it was an episode that we posted, but you had asked me what kept you in going.
Yeah.
Why are you still doing it? Right.
Yeah. Why insurance? I think that's how I asked. Why still insurance?
And why I'm asking this, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think I think this is important. Rejection is a big piece of our business. It's very easy to be deflated based off of rejection. I got to imagine you've been rejected about X amount of times.
Yeah, just kidding. No, it's part of the
business. People do business who they know, like, and trust. It's a hard question for me to answer, and I'm wondering if it's as equally as hard for you as to, like, how were you able to just say, I'm just going to keep going with this and just get past that rejection?
I think as part of that, self-audit, the amount of, and I'm not sure if you've gone through these, but I'm sure you've read them at least. The amount of rebuttal training that I've gone through being on the sales side is overwhelming. And it was like, okay, no, I don't want to do this. No, I don't like those numbers. No this, no that, whatever it is. There's always start off with no, or I got to talk to so-and-so. I got to talk to my spouse or whatever it is. Well, then the aspect of that rebuttal training never said as to why they're saying that. They just want to get it. That client just wants an out to stop the conversation.
Right.
But why do they want to stop the conversation? It was never, none of the rebuttal trainings that I can remember
ever taught you that?
Ever taught me that.
Wow.
They never said, okay, analyze why they're saying that. Oh, they have to go talk to their spouse. Okay, is your spouse the decision maker, or you just want to make sure you're on the same page with your spouse or significant other, whomever it is, of these numbers? And is there a time that all three of us can connect? I never got that.
Yeah. When did you learn that?
Probably through the reading and the relationship, just the emotional aspect of, it wasn't taught that way through the rebuttal training. And
I don't know if it's taught that way now, like in just formal trainings. Like when I listen in on trainings, like, I don't know if I've heard anyone sit there and say, like, all right, like, I have that all the time. Like, oh, I got to talk to my wife about this pricing. Totally get it. I have a spouse too. Like, I got to run things by her too. Let me ask you this, just so I know and I'm prepared for our next conversation. What are some things you think she's going to think of that is not present in this conversation right now? And you know what sometimes that does? It moves the conversation forward.
Right.
It stops them. Because like they're like, well, oh shoot, like I don't know what she's gonna say either. So, and it just moves it forward. Like, but that I don't know if that's like informal trainings and sales training. Maybe it is. I could be wrong, but I really can't even remember where I learned that, other than probably just like you said, like reading, like just asking these questions, of like being inquisitive of the scenario or the person that you're dealing with.
Yeah, because you're in front of me. I'm talking to you about a mortgage. You're gonna have a certain emotional reaction. You're going to have two emotional reactions, though, because if you got your spouse. So I like these numbers. The second thing you're going to say is, I don't know what my wife's going to say.
Right.
I want to know what my wife thinks of this, too. Well, so do I. Let's have a conversation. Like, for you to be the middle person, however much you know about mortgages, and you have to explain it to someone else, and then they're going to make a decision based on what you're saying. Well, what if they find out after the fact that you had explained it wrong and I explained it right, and you missed out on the dream home?
Right.
How is that conversation going to go? Not to like put them in a bad spot, but let's all three of us connect. Oh, I don't have time right now. I understand. Personal and professional lives pop up all the time. I can be as flexible as possible. When is a good time for you? And what is your intake of this information? Do you think a half hour is enough time? Asking that too Like, oh, I only have a half hour. Well, is a half hour, I like to cover these 3 things with you. These 3 things are very unfamiliar. Do you feel that 30 minutes will be able to give you a good grasp of this information?
Yeah.
I can explain it as simple or as easy as possible in terminology, but that doesn't mean that it gets retained. Everyone retains knowledge at a different level in a different time frame. So is 30 minutes truly enough time? Do you feel that's enough time? More times than not, I get 30 minutes. No, I need a little bit more time. I don't want to be rushed. Okay, let's see, 45 minutes or an hour. Asking that's another way of building trust. Like, hey, they're not trying to make me rush into a decision. I'm not rushed to learn this. I already know that you don't have time because of what you just told me that I don't have time right now. Okay. Let's work backwards then.
Yeah. And one of the plus sides of learning how to be emotionally intelligent or high IQ or EQ, I think is how they say it, right? Is it also forces you to be direct. This business is a business of being direct. You said it in the last episode where you dealt with an agent who didn't rip off that Band-Aid after 3 days.
Yeah.
Be direct. And directness does a couple of things. One, it takes off that weight and anxiety that you create, internally, like, oh, well, they're not going to like me, or they're not going to like this rate. I'm about to lose this relationship that I don't even have. And then 2, like, it shows you how to navigate the conversation to get from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to wrap up with familiarity. I don't know if you ever read the book, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. It's a fantastic book. The 3 books that I will read every single year, not cover to cover, but I'll open it up or go to social media to find blurbs or stuff about it, is what I mentioned, How to Win Friends and Influence Others, Atomic Habits, and Fanatical Prospecting. Fanatical Prospecting is what I like to think of the sales Bible, very along the lines of like the to-dos within prospecting for business. And one of the things he talks about is called the Law of Familiarity. Okay. I'm at an event the other day for the award ceremony, which I talked to you about.
Yep.
And I had mentioned to a buddy of mine, I said, hey, let me know what events you're going to. And he goes, he's like, you want some new relationships and stuff like that? I said, no, I just want to be familiar. I want to be a familiar face. Because I'm at the point in my career that it's important for me to, and even with my own podcast, is it helps me be in a room that I'm not actually in. So I become a familiar face. There's been multiple times in this last year that people have been like, oh, I know you. I'm like, sorry, good to see you again too. He's like, oh no, they go like, oh yeah, I saw you on your podcast. And to me, familiarity does more than trying to push the button of a relationship. I was at this event and I was kind of shocked. I brought my wife and I was kind of shocked that I was able to talk to like 25 different people, and probably 10 of them are people that I haven't really talked to in the last calendar year. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just because I'm been present with what I'm doing for the association and what I'm doing outside of it, the content and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And people see me on social media. So I said to him, I said, hey, listen, I just want to go to be familiar. I want people to know who I am just by being there. And maybe they'll get to know me. How that translates into business, I think time will tell. But I know from experience in the last couple of years, the more I've been in a room, or for that matter, the content that people have seen, has turned my business around. I've already written premium this year more than I did all of last year.
Wow. Congrats. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you. And that's because of the referral network. There's people that are referring me that I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would have never thought of a referral from that person, but it's because I'm in the same room. Mm-hmm. So my point is going back to your one, when I wish that I separated because I met you, you have to do business with me. I wish that I put myself in the same room as you multiple times and being a part of it, because familiarity for me has been very helpful. Mm-hmm. Not sure if you've seen that in your business.
So I have, but in a different light. There's 2 aspects that I've really been focusing on, and you're touching on it in a different light, and it's kind of interesting to see a different perspective say the same thing. So lately, especially the last year, probably year and a half, I'll say is to be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So you're saying about, just to be familiar, to be in that room.
Yep.
And it's rooms you've not been in. I am not a podcaster. Never thought I would be, and here I am. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
We talked about it offline about how I felt about the first few recordings and everything. I was like, I was so
conscious.
yeah,
Critical.
It was just like if I keep doing that, I'm almost like I don't even want to watch the
Right.
the previews. Like just run with it, because if I do that, I'll get my own head and I'll say, hey, let's just stop what we're doing. So to your point, getting in rooms you're not in, that is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's really what I'm asking from clients too, when I'm especially first time home buyers. I'm asking them to get comfortable about something they're uncomfortable with, not knowing anything about mortgages and making the largest purchase of their life. If I can't do that, I'm asking someone else to do it. I should be able to do it
Right.
too. And then I'm probably going to mess up the actual quote, but I've seen numerous podcasters and read this quote numerous times that 90% of success is just showing up.
Yep.
But just showing up with that right mindset we were talking about, like, year one, I had hundreds of scripts to go through. Like, oh, if it's this person, I'm gonna do this one. Showing up with intent. You go to that event, like I'm sure you had, like you knew there was few people that you have connections with that you knew they were going. You wanted to speak to them.
Yep.
You wanted to make sure, but you also have the perspective of, I'm in this room. There are other people in this room that I have not talked to or I'd like to meet. I'm also going to do that too.
Right.
It wasn't just like, all right, everyone, here's a business card. I'm done for the night. I showed up. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
That 90% of showing up is with intent.
Yeah.
So
That's like Yogi Berra. I think Yogi Berra said that about baseball. Like 90% of baseball it might have been Yogi Berra, it could have been someone else, but 90% of baseball is mental.
Right.
Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
To
touch on that, and this was be an interesting thing too, is that I'm not sure for basketball fans, they'll know the name Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal was actually I shouldn't say very good, but he was better than what he was at practice as a free throw shooter than what he was in games. And my understanding is the story is that in college, there was a fan that said something to him about missing a free throw. It stuck in his head. And then obviously the size of his hand with the ball, but like that got in his head. I remember seeing a board, like it was at Lakers practice, and it was like Kobe Bryant but he was like third or fourth, Shaq. Because practice, there's nobody yelling at him.
Yeah.
That's a mental aspect. And I think that's, part of it too, is just, showing up with confidence and intent.
But practice. Like this is not just, I got my license, I can sell insurance. You got your license, you could do loans. Like you do have to practice.
Yeah.
Whether that's listening to a podcast, whether that's reading a book, whether that's whatever it is, you have to figure out your own voice in this business. And the last thing I'll leave is, I don't know if you've ever been a part of BNI. You ever been a BNI?
Very early on, like the first 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So the one thing that I will say that I really love about BNI, and I now understand what it means. Good organization. I had really good success with. It was almost like training for my job, but it wasn't orchestrated by the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Givers gain. Givers gain. You give not to. So I give you the referral and you trust me. Or not even just the referral. I do something for you first without the expectation of something on the back end of things.
Mm-hmm.
And the older I get, I'll say I probably think about giver's gain. There's a joke, I don't remember during COVID, where women were asking men, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, this was a big viral trend and I was like, why are people asking that? And so basically women would ask men, how often do you think about this, the Roman Empire? And men would be like, oh yeah, every day. Like they would think about it daily. And some people would be like, oh, a couple times a week, 3 or 4 times a week. And then I just joked around and asked some of my close friends who I know who follow history, know history. Hey, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And they look at me like, what? I'm like, no, seriously, like answer the question. They're like, yeah, like every day. I'm like, for real? And I'm like, have you seen this social media thing? And And they were like, yeah, no. But so it's like a real thing that people, anyway, whatever the psychology behind it is. But I think about giver's gain, that concept, every single day. How can I do something for somebody without wanting anything in return? Because there's a value of doing that. For example, I'm running a podcast for the association. I'm doing that for them.
Mhm.
I don't want anything back from that. Like, but I'm gaining something from it. I'm not trying to gain anything by it. I genuinely like doing this.
Mhm.
I genuinely like putting the content together and orchestrating. I'm producing and talking about what you should say and what you shouldn't say, and what I'm going to cut out and how. I genuinely like doing this. So I'm doing it for them. But in turn, I'm gaining something on the back end, right? So the idea of giver's gain is that it's going to be reciprocated to you some way.
Mhm.
Just don't expect it.
Right.
If you go into business, and listen, I'm not saying don't expect ROI. You talk about time is money, right? There has to be an ROI for things. I'm not saying don't calculate it, but don't let that be your why behind what you're doing, because it will happen if you have the right intentions.
Paul, you had mentioned return on investment. The one thing that I think gets misconstrued about return on investment is the return on investment is how quickly will I get my money back?
Yes.
Or my time back, or how quickly will that become beneficial? Well, understand that before you commit to doing it.
Yes.
Though.
Yes.
So I did it. Now my why are you doing it? Why is it an afterthought?
Right.
That should be part of the decision making of return on investment. There's a colleague of mine. He's got the Long Game Strategy podcast, and it's like, all right, the long game. Well, there's long term, there's midterm, and there's short term.
Yes.
Return on investment.
Yes.
Knowing what bucket, what you're doing, what bucket that it fits in, have that mindset before even committing to.
That's so good. That's so good.
Have that mindset heading into it. And, just to close out the episode, I want to make sure we come full circle of the, year one to where we are today. Paul, what is your message to someone, and it doesn't have to be just the insurance, side of things, but what is your message to someone thinking of, I don't want to use the word quitting, but like someone thinking of changing their industry or just getting out of sales in general?
Yeah. I said this to somebody in a Reddit thread the other day. I use Reddit. I see a bunch of stuff on Reddit, and obviously I'm pretty sure every Reddit user is anonymous. And this person was struggling with insurance and whether or not they wanted to do it and switching agencies and whatnot. And the first thing that I said is you have to define if you want to do it. Is this something you really want to do? And so if you say yes, then okay, so now let's branch off to the next thing. Can you commit to it? Is that something you can commit to? You just mentioned the podcast, The Long Game, right? Mm-hmm. This is the long game. And within the long game, there's many long games. That long game could be on a day-to-day basis. It could be on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a yearly basis, every 6 months, quarter, however you want to define it. But you have to define it. You cannot sit there and allow circumstances to dictate your emotion. You can't let the circumstance dictate your behavior or your actions. You cannot do that. That is a recipe for disaster. So if you can sit there and understand that Christmas comes every year, once a year, New Year's comes once a year, your birthday comes once a year, and take that same mindset into your business and saying, okay, things aren't going to all align how I want it to align. I have a business plan for a reason. When you and I met, you and I talked about business planning a little bit when we first met. And I had asked you, I don't know if you remember this, I said, based off of what you put on for your business plan in November, whenever you planned it, are you on track to hit that right now? And if you're not, what do you need? How do you need it to look like? I do think people, agents or whatever, anything that you're doing, you have to not just jot down things on paper because you're supposed to. You need to figure out why you're jotting it down on paper. What does this mean to me? How much income do I want to make? How much freedom do I want? What trips do I want to go on? What do I want to do for extracurricular? Do I want to start a podcast? Do I want to play the piano? Do I want to play video games? Whatever that thing is,
right.
You need to decide it. And you have to figure out the ROI. How long is it going to take to get there? And do I have the capacity to do it? And another thing I'll plug in here is limit the amount of things you're putting into it, right? Like, don't do too many things at once. Find one or two things throughout this process that work for you, because then that's where the overwhelming comes and you're just going to lead you to not taking action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's all. That's great, and I think that ties into what I would say for the someone thinking of changing industries or getting out of sales. Understand your own passion,
Mm,
personally and professionally, because your passion will drive you. It's going to drive you no matter what.
correct.
If you're passionate about helping someone, okay, that's in some degree that's sales.
Right.
You're passionate about doing that. Um, you know, if you're truly passionate about it, okay, I have passion for it. What am I doing? To your point, what am I doing that's working? What am I doing that's a challenge? If there's 4 challenges, don't try to tackle them all at the same time. Because if you try to tackle them all at the same time, you're going to try a bunch of different stuff.
Mhm.
One is you're going to put them in 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
Those numbers, it's never going to be the same order every single day.
Yes.
Understanding what those 4 overall have a capacity to change your passion for good or bad, that's what needs to be understood. And so that's where, we're pretty in line there to say, I think it comes down to passion.
Yeah.
If you have the drive and commitment for whatever industry you want to be in, for professionally, but also personally, don't like that aspect. I went to a management training 10 plus years ago. The terminology of work-life balance,
Mhm.
that term work-life. Why is work first?
Yeah.
So like the speaker was like, it should be life-work balance.
Right.
You don't work to live. You live, and as part of that, work is involved. It shouldn't be the first aspect that you think of as work.
Yeah.
The first thing I think of is my family when I wake up.
Sure.
What are we doing today? What's on the schedule? Okay, we got school, breakfast, all this. I do not think about work for the first probably hour of my day.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I've just said, and I'm sorry, because it just came to me too, is for our businesses, we had to get licensed.
Yeah.
Mine was, I had to take 2 tests to get my property casualty and life insurance. That's for someone who took the tests probably 5 years removed from college. I hadn't done any testing or anything like that. It was a level of commitment to be able to study information that I had to retain to pass a test.
Mhm.
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. But I did it. And I tell a lot of the young guys at the office and girls at the office that you took care of one of the hardest things of this job. If you could do that, you can do anything else in this job. And one of my sayings is do the hard things first. Bang out the hard things first. Get it over with, whether it's a hard call to a loan officer to say, hey, thanks for handing off this referral, but $3,000 higher than we expected. Let's do that first. Or it's a laundry list of service calls that even though it's dreadful and you have to, take care of X, Y, and Z within the carrier, you got to bang that off. Do the things that are hard first because it makes the easy things easy.
I couldn't agree with that more. It is, just especially the hard things because, I'll just do the easy things first. Well, the hardest thing being done first should make the easy things even easier.
That's right.
Because now you're motivated to make up for that, make up for it or try to self-correct it. I couldn't agree with that more, Paul.
That's right. So listen, guys, episode 6 of the Handoff. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube at the Handoff with Paul and Colin. And we'll catch you next time.